My dear brothers and sisters, a letter I received some time ago introduces the subject of my talk. The writer was contemplating a temple marriage to a man whose eternal companion had died. She would be a second wife. She asked this question: would she be able to have her own house in the next life, or would she have to live with her husband and his first wife? I just told her to trust the Lord.
Travis Wayne Goodsell. On 18th of April this year, I did a video titled LDS Church Exposed in Sex Slavery and Trafficking, 18 USC chapter 77. The very next day, on the 19th of April, 2021, you will notice that I have two videos with thumbnail pictures of women in swimsuits and a little caption to describe the swimsuit, to adjust it, change it for the theme of the video. You'll notice in between there's no thumbnail. But if you watch the video, you will see that there's a woman with her shirt off. She's still wearing clothing. It's underclothing. We call it underwear. But again, it has a caption which was, "I gave my shirt off my back to serve a mission for the LDS Church," something like that. And so the topic of that 5-minute video dealt with that concept of how the church and YouTube are harming the public and Mormons, as Mormons are also being incited to violence and anger and hatred. But you notice that I then start doing videos about how YouTube is financially benefiting from the LDS Church, talking about how they've attacked me, and then they silenced my videos. I was banned after that video from doing further posting. They hadn't banned my account. You can still access it and see it. I've got it up on the screen, for example. But the day after I go over the law about sex slavery and trafficking and connecting the church to it, YouTube finds an excuse to claim nudity and sexuality. Not swimsuits. Yeah. YouTube is corrupt also. And what is interesting is, after I did this video, Elizabeth Smart came to Utah and held a sex trafficking, sex slavery awareness conference. Isn't that interesting? The timing that I have with my videos versus Oakes's timing. Video timing of mine versus LDS Prophet Oakes, for example. Because I did that video, or I found out that they were having a conference, or they had a conference, after I had done the video on sex slavery and trafficking. And what's involved with sexual... So it appears I have a hacker this morning. They shut off my camera. I was suspicious of it when I was looking for Oakes's video. This time it's through Google, not Microsoft. So Google has been hacked this morning, and they're using Google Chrome to hack my computer. So that's not cool. I'll see if I can finish this video, and then otherwise I'll have to do precautionary measures to protect myself here. So with sexual crimes of this nature, there's what is called grooming that takes place leading up to it. Now, psychologists, interestingly, are not, it's not hypocrisy, because they're purposely leaving the information out from the public because they're using it themselves to maintain clients. The grooming is very vague in general, but they claim that it's a consistent pattern. After I was abandoned, and then I think after she got an official divorce from me, my mom was sitting at the kitchen table working on what she said was her Relief Society lesson on divorce for Mormons. And she was reading from a book about the signs that people go through after a traumatic divorce. And she thought that, I would have and confirm the signs in the book that she was reading. She had no clue that I'm smarter than them. She had no clue what my education was. Nobody cares to know what my education was. They just care about that I graduated, got a degree, and then they assume that, I can now walk into any job and make enough money to provide for a family of 80 billion kids, white picket fence, 2 cars, credit cards for the wife while I'm away at work. This delusional thinking is part of the grooming process. But she asked me to tell her what I went through after the incident. And so I started, she first started asking me, did you experience this? Did you experience this? And I was saying, well, yeah. But then I started going over and telling her what I experienced, rather than letting her dictate to me what I experienced. That's one of the grooming practices of psychologists as well as actual groomers. They tell you what to think and how to feel. That's not on this list. And it got to the point where my mom was not finding what I was telling her, at case in point. And so she closed the book, got out her pen and her paper, and was taking notes. I was now the authority, where the author of the book, who has most likely a PhD, who's claiming to be the authority, publishing the book, was worthless to her. I had converted my mom that I actually do know something. But only for that one thing. She went right back to not believing me afterwards. And so, when I go over this with you, understand I've been a victim of the Mormon Church, born and raised. I know what I experienced. And because of my education, I was taught how to recognize it. And so when they talk about victim selection, they talk about selecting someone based on ease of access to them or their perceived vulnerability. This is what they're withholding from you, because they're assuming that predators are animalistic in that they seek out the weaker from the herd to kill them as part of that survival of the fittest, the origin of the species theory, which needs to be dismissed. It's wrong, because there are many examples where it doesn't work. And if you can find some examples where it doesn't work, then you have to dismiss it as a theory, and you need to come up with something else. But scientists are not following their own education and training. Naughty, naughty. But a real predator will also, if they find somebody who's an easy target, yeah. But eventually, if they get experience and they're not caught by the cops, and it doesn't have to be for sex, it can be for other things. They can be cops, for example, grooming the people in the neighborhood, causing the fear. And that's the vulnerability aspect of it, is that if they don't have somebody who is an easy target, the grooming process involves making people easy targets. And that becomes a more challenging, exciting thrill for them, because it involves some effort on their part. If you've seen Hannibal Lecter and any of those movies involved with Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs, etc., that was his level of grooming, because the relationship between him and Jodie Foster, and Clarice is played by a different character now if you've been watching CBS's reboot of Clarice, or it's a spin-off. It's still her. It's after the cowboy guy incident. But he is trying to use her to groom her. He's grooming her. That's why they didn't want her to be involved with him for the case she was working on. And that's what he was doing. He was grooming her. He was in the position of vulnerability, as she believed, as she was trying to groom him for information for the case, as he likewise was grooming her, as he was fully confident despite his perceived vulnerability. And that is the danger of a real predator, not just for sex, but for any kind of victimization. And the grooming is for control over the other person, to take their agency away and to get them to do your bidding, so that you have full, you're the puppet master. That's the whole purpose of this. That's whether it's sex or other criminal means that you're pursuing, that's what it's done. And Elizabeth Smart knows this. It's just Brian David Mitchell incorporated the two into one, using religion as his cover to gain trust. And it worked because she was a girl. She was an easy target, so to speak. And so I need to put in a clarifier that women need to understand there's a difference between a guy who's just naturally horny and a sexual predator. As I've talked about in other videos about a man's sexual process, we naturally have to have sex. There is no turning it off. There is no controlling ourselves. We have to have it. When we don't have it, that's when tensions, aggression, and more deviant thoughts that even lead to criminal thoughts take place. And if you've not heard in the news, Mormon news, a sex therapist, I believe she was from Wyoming or Wisconsin, can't remember, there's so much different places in the news going on, but she was Mormon. She converted as a girl. Sort of doubt that. But she is a psychologist, so she knows how to groom, which may explain why she chose the career field she did. People tend to do that to try to gain control over what has been uncontrollable in their life. So you become a firefighter because of a fire in your early youth that hurt somebody, burned down your house and killed your parents. So you go and become a firefighter and become a TV special. But you can see that in your lives, is that there are events that happen in your childhood that inspire you to become what you become. And so she's a sex therapist, specifically. And so she knows sexual predator behavior. And the church excommunicated her because she taught that masturbation's okay. She taught that pornography is not okay, that it's addictive. And I've been wanting to do the video for that alone. She does not understand male biological processes for reproductive systems. You see, because she claims masturbation's okay, but doesn't understand that masturbation is without a partner for sex. And so she doesn't think, and I don't know, I haven't listened to her talking about why she thinks pornography is bad and addictive, but it's like eating, in that you have to eat, otherwise you die. Now with eating, you can overeat, but it's a different process, because in order to overeat, you have to groom your stomach to enlarge, and that takes time. Stretching the heart to its or stretching the stomach to its maximum, and then again stretching it, and again stretching it. You can't consistently eat, because once your stomach's full, you can't eat anymore. You're done. And so that concept of addiction is where you keep going and you don't stop. With drugs, they're addictive. You shoot up, you get the high, it wears off, you need to shoot up again. You have to keep the high going. There is no stopping point other than when the drugs have kicked in. But that's not the stopping point. Similar to food and grooming yourself to be overweight in stretching out your stomach. And so sex is more in line with neither. Because men's bodies naturally produce seed. And if you know this, you can create a vulnerability in a person. See, prostitutes know this from experience. And so they know how to groom a guy to lure him in, to have him pay her money for what turns out to be a couple minutes if the guy is not able to have experience with prostitutes. Or if you've heard about the shooting, I can't remember where, at the massage parlor. Yeah, it was sexual massage. Asians were being held as kidnapped victims involved in sex slavery, and most likely sex trafficking to perform sex slavery here in America. The news was not covering that. They were treating it as some racial thing. But nonetheless, and so what you can see here is the difference between a man who just has to release versus a predator involves deception and lying premeditatedly. The man, it's not until, it's time to release. And men don't make the connection, just like women don't realize, is it that time of the month? A woman has to actually identify her patterns for her period. I told about dating Kimberly, who didn't realize her cycle was 3 weeks. It was me who recognized it. So there is a difference. And women need to understand that that's a natural process that women go through. Yes, you can get an IUD and it's all gone. It's a miracle thing that doctors don't want you to know about because they don't want you to have free sex. But it works for periods too. And so there is a difference. But yes, a man who wants it's time for sex, he will seek out a woman naturally, especially if he's in a church that forbids masturbation. You and your hand, Pink. And so you see in our culture working for the weekend. The weekends become the time frame for when guys build it up to then blow it all on the weekend. But guys can do it as often as their body replenishes. And so there is no set time period other than what their body has already set. And once it's gone, just like Mad Morgan tells Sorsha, it went away. The best line ever. But with a predator, they keep going because it's not about sex in sex predator stuff. It's about control. It's about dominating. manipulating. And that's the difference, is that an actual groomer, an actual predator, premeditated, involved in the action, and then continues afterward. And so then you have gaining access and isolating the victim. When you're in a position of authority or trust, yeah, wow, they gave it to you. That was easy. So you're hearing a lot in Utah about teachers, primary teachers, bishops, who are involved in this sexual predator behavior. They were in positions of trust. Your boss at work, for example, John DeLynn. If you're unfamiliar with John DeLynn, it's because he's been grooming you. John DeLynn is a psychologist. He knows how to groom. I've been doing the videos. He's not happy with me. I called him a cult leader and discussed with him in an email, which he did not respond, about how he knows how to groom. Again, I know better than him in his own field of study because of my education, which supersedes everybody's career field. It's like physics knows all about engineering and then some. So when 9/11, you have engineers supporting the commission. Oh yeah, we agree, we support. Well, the guys who designed the buildings said no. We're engineers in architectural terms. We specifically designed it to withstand this. And sure enough, Mr. Physics from BYU said, hey, something's wrong. It's violating the laws of physics in the commission. But we won't go into that. YouTube gets very sensitive about that topic. And as you can tell, they're already causing me grief this morning through Google. And so gaining access is why you hear a lot of times of domestic violence, or an uncle or a bishop who are involved in sexual predator grooming. And it's because they're convenient, they're easy. These guys are not really as bad as the news makes them out to be. They're not the church, Elder Oaks, for example. I've already got it set up so that I will put the clip for you. And we're building up to that because the church leaders already have selected their groomers, people to be groomed. That's the Mormons. They've already got access and isolate you through conference. They've got mass grooming that they're involved with. This is severe predator behavior where they become masters of a mass grooming. And theirs is different than sexual predators, but it is the same. They're working to get their own little honeys when they get this all figured out. But that's where that comes in, is that they've got access to you because you're Mormon. Then you have trust development and keeping secrets. Mormons, go ahead and explain to people about what goes on and what the covenants and and the rituals and the tokens, signs, and names in the temple are. Go ahead, share them with other people in the world. Oh, you don't? You won't do it? Why not? Because it's a sacred secret? Yeah, you are being groomed to keep the sexual predator behavior in the temple, as well as seditious behavior and criminal behavior that is being groomed in the temple. And I went over that in that sex trafficking, sex slavery video that YouTube shut me down for. And so they've already given you trust. They've made you vulnerable as they're taking your money, saying that you are not worthy unless you pay a full tithe. That's a protection racket. I've gone over that as well. That's a crime. It's not a donation. You cannot go to the temple unless you're fully paid. And it's a protection racket because they tell us, oh, well, it's fire insurance. It's so that you can have inheritance in the second coming when we're in Zion. But we're not going back to Missouri. It's here in Utah. Huh. Yeah, so the trust, we're prophets of God. We speak the word of God. Obey us. Not the dead prophets. If you remember the is it 17 or I think it's 17. Well, I can't remember. Maybe it's just 7. There's so many different ones out there for Mormons. There was 30 yesterday with so you think you can make your own Book of Mormon, do you? This is physical evidence that Joseph Smith, the Book of Mormon, is true. No, no, no. Why do we use the edited version if Joseph Smith was unedited? But as prophets, Mormons are deceived. This is the predator, the deep-seated predatorial behavior, before, during, and after, of convincing Mormons that it's the only true church, that they're the only ones who are speaking directly to Jesus Christ. Even though we're not Christian, we're supposed to be more in line with the learning of the Jews, which means Jesus is not our God. That should have been your clue. And that's how I've been doing all my videos, is rather than coming right out and saying grooming like I'm doing in this video, I would explain without explaining the various grooming processes. That's why I say my videos are a warning to you, so that you can identify the corruption of the church and what they're doing to you to incite you to put a hate comment and a thumbs down on my videos, or to ban me from posting videos on YouTube. And because that's not in there, I don't think. Let's see, attempt by abusers to make their behavior seem net. Yeah. They're not discussing this. There's punishments involved. And guilt trips that are involved, so that they get you back on track. Remember, the church tells Mormons, despite becoming Christ, taking upon the name of Christ through the washing and anointing, they nonetheless keep telling Mormons, oh, you're always going to be a sinner. You're always unworthy. You got to keep repenting every single day, but make sure you pay your tithing. They're debasing Mormons, telling them that they're just evil people who need them to tell them what to do. That they speak for God. This is extremely dangerous because they've got millions who believe them. They've got people who are incited to Antichrist behavior, as I'm a victim of that too, as you well know. So that's not in here that they're talking about, the grooming signs. And the keeping of secrets, yeah, the temple. They compromise you. This is what the Russians call kompromat. That if you're not vulnerable, they make you vulnerable. They compromise you. Kompromat. And the secrets and the trust involve the guilt trip, the telling you, oh, you're a criminal, we caught you. You have to do what we tell you to do now. Yeah, we own you now. Otherwise, we're going to expose you to the public. Well, you know, your dick pic will be all over the news, Jeff Bezos. You know, Saudi Arabia was the ones behind that, as it turns out. And so this is how it works and functions. Yes, Russia are grooming Americans. They've succeeded, but they're still going. This is how deep-seated their predatorial behavior is. And what also is a part of this that is not discussed here is that the victim not only blames themselves, but protects and defends the groomer. That's the incitement part of it. That the groomer gets their prey to attack other people to distance themselves. Plausible deniability. And you see that when people get emotionally upset. How dare you talk about my father that way? How dare you? This is the true Church of Jesus Christ, and I bear testimony that it's true. That's another indicator you've not only been brainwashed, but you're being groomed. Because you're not explaining anything by just simply stating the church is true. You're assuming things that you're not saying and expecting others to assume them with you. And like I've been explaining to you, I believe the Book of Mormon is true, just not the way Mormons do. And so when Mormons testify that the Book of Mormon is true, I can say, yeah, you're right, but I can also say, no, you're wrong. Because it's so general. It's not explained. And an actual testimony is not a concluding statement. It's supposed to be talking about the process to getting to that conclusion. And we don't do that in the church. And in so doing, we're keeping secrets as the victims of predatorial behavior. So not only is the church telling us to keep it all a sacred secret, but we as Mormons are groomed to give testimonies, to withhold information, to deny and reject any other claims about the church. You know, people are furious in the church about my videos about the real church history. Mormons have to accept it. It's not something you can have an opinion over. Well, I believe Joseph Smith did see Heavenly Father and the Gospel's Jesus. You don't get to pick and choose what to believe. That's not how truth works. Truth is, and it has to be accepted. It is not something you get to choose to believe. And Mormons, in their grooming process, are taught to deny science, taught to deny researching, taught to deny truth. Mormons instead memorize what scriptures the church wants them to memorize. The manuals for Sunday school only have specific lessons pulled out and designed to cover only certain parts of the scriptures. For example, I've gone over with the Book of Mormon the passage in 1 Nephi chapter 1 verse 2. I write in the learning of the Jews, language of the Egyptians. The manual only allows language of the Egyptians. And then they throw in speculation rather than explaining it, because they don't know. We don't have the plates. But the learning of the Jews should have been cake. Here's the learning of the Jews. This is what the Jews believe. This is who the Jews believe is their Messiah. It's not the Christian Messiah. And so as Mormons, we're supposed to be the learning of the Jews, with this Messiah, not the Christian Messiah. Do you see? Purposely withholding information, keeping secrets, and causing Mormons to likewise do the same. Oh, I've not heard about that, Travis. I can't accept that. I don't feel right about what you're saying. You've been groomed. You've been brainwashed. And so here's the desensitization to touch and discussion of sexual topics. There is no such thing as desensitized. It's called brainwashing, where you believe the lie. Desensitized. Oh, the body of a woman is evil, and I've become desensitized to it. That's called body shaming. And so this is where the now ex-Mormon sex therapist does not understand pornography. She does not get it. She thinks that it's a desensitization process. No. But in outside of sexual grooming, there is a normalizing, and we saw this all last year. It was pissing me off because the liberal media was saying, oh, we can't normalize this, we can't normalize this, we can't normalize this, we can't normalize this. New normal, new normal, new normal. The liberal media was grooming their audience, and it was pissing me off. Because in the beginning, oh, this is horrible. And then now it's like, oh, yeah, this is the way it is. It's our new normal. See, in the beginning, oh, Trump, he's trying to get people infected. And now, oh, we need to get the vaccine. Trump caused the need for the vaccine. But the liberal media are forgetting that. He groomed America, and the liberal media groomed along with him. And they became desensitized as they desensitized their audience. And they're doing it again. See, here in Utah, the governor is setting it up to disperse vaccines to different places. I only have one access to get the vaccine now. And they're never in stock. They never have the vaccine. So how am I supposed to get vaccinated? Because they've already caused the virus in the first place by the spread and escalation of it. And now they're withholding the vaccine from me. Because I only have one place to go to get it. I don't have the ability to travel all over the valley looking for a place to give me the vaccine. Excuse me. And so they're purposely withholding the vaccine from me. And yet the liberal media, oh, you guys are resistant to being vaccinated. You need to get vaccinated. We're trying to get you guys to get vaccinated. There was only one reporting that I heard where Pfizer is suspected of needing a third. And that was the warning we got in the beginning that this may be a regular shot that'll have to be given consistently until the virus is gone and eradicated. Isn't that nice for Pfizer? All the money they're making. So, yeah. But with the church, the Oaks clip, the church refused to conform and comply to the laws of the United States. Despite Article of Faith number 12, the church insisted polygamy is not a crime. Even when they got shut down, they were still practicing it. So the official declaration that we have, yeah, that wasn't the original. There were congressional hearings called the Reed-Smoot hearings that also needed to be implemented to shut down the church and get them to stop because they just wouldn't. And they still haven't. With Brigham Young putting in 132, taking out monogamy chapter and gutting 131, the government let it slide. Said, oh, I guess if it was the founder and you're calling it spiritual marriage, for the afterlife, and that you promise not to do it on earth, fine. Again, this is what predators do. You give them an inch, they take you a mile. And so, in 1978, the church is under pressure to allow blacks into the church. Blacks should have known better. Church is racist. You don't want any part of it. Nonetheless, the church said, well, there's this thing called the Edmunds-Tucker Act. Can you make it go away for us? Fine. You've demonstrated you're not practicing polygamy. And so, what about FLDS? took it away from them also. And so they had to get caught on snap fraud violations rather than polygamy. As everybody was freaking out and panicked, oh, you're separating the mothers from their children. It's a crime. The children are victims. And yes, even the women. But if you allow them to continue to exist as a religion, they're going to keep practicing it. They need to understand that what they did was wrong. They were victims of a predator. Likewise in the church. Because as I've explained, Nelson, when he took over, implemented a number of changes. Not only did he say, hey, we're compromised by Russia, and by the way, they're still working on it. After all these years, I saw that. I wasn't able to post on it. But Nelson did away with home teaching, which left us vulnerable to coronavirus, so that there wasn't that line of communication that home teaching provided. And he also did away with the high priest group. Bumped them all down into the elders so that they would be grandfathered out, you know, like say a coronavirus that would exterminate the elderly first. If you haven't paid attention to your scriptures, it is essential to become a high priest in order to be exalted in the celestial kingdom. An elder doesn't cut it. Did you know that? You didn't. It's in section 76 of the Doctrine and Covenants. That's why when you go through the temple, you are washed to become a high priest. That's the way it was supposed to have been done. That you're an elder, and then you get endowed and become a high priest. And it's all been screwed up. But yeah, your washings are to be a high priest, just as your anointings are to become Christ, which same as a king and a queen. Yes, women too. And thus you become Melchizedek, of the Melchizedek priesthood, which was the name change from the original name of Amen, son Amen, Amen-El, Emmanuel, the priesthood of the 18th dynasty that I've gone over with you. And so Nelson comes out in 2019 with a revised temple text, and I exposed his change to allow for polygamy. I did it in 2020, I believe, because it took me a while to find it or obtain the actual text. And then it even required my ex, who came over and said, oh yeah, the law of chastity has been changed too. Oh. So I pulled out the text, went over it, sure enough, oh my God, those? His law? Whoa. So yes, they're grooming Mormons to return to polygamy. As in the October conference, as the video clip I'm going to put at the beginning, he's grooming the audience by talking about a letter he received from a woman who's marrying a husband who's already had a first wife, and she's now concerned, am I going to have my own mansion in the afterlife? And he says, trust in God and trust in the Lord. That's the title of his video, is Trust in the Lord. For polygamy. And again, who's the Lord? Well, it's not Jesus of the Gospels, because he doesn't exist. He's a fraud. We're the learning of the Jews. That's a different Messiah. So who then is the Lord then, if he knows that it's not the actual Lord? It's him. Trust me, is what he's saying. And that's part of the desensitization process, and that trust development in keeping secrets, is that he lies and deceives to get control over people. And Mormons, if you hear in the clip, they're laughing at him. Not at him, they're laughing with the comment that he says, trust in the Lord. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, you have to just trust the Lord. You don't get an answer to whether you're going to have your own house in the afterlife. That's ridiculous. Yeah, he got you. He got you to humiliate the woman asking the question, rather than identifying that what he's suggesting is criminal. Polygamy is criminal. Nelson Ori changed it in the temple. You know, he did away with women have to obey their husband, though I did the video, which got me banned by YouTube, about how the sealing still has women, you give yourself to your husband to obey him, as it's connected to the law of obedience. That's the whole thing. Men receive the women, women give themselves to their husband. That's sex trafficking, sex slavery. You know, that's the sale thing. If you saw Kung Fu's latest episode this past, is it Wednesday? Yeah. On Wednesday night, I see it on Thursday mornings. She talked about the bride price as she got angry with the parents. That was awesome. Comparing herself to a duck. But that's what Mormons are involved in. And they don't realize it. They've been desensitized to what a crime is. They don't realize they're being trafficked at BYU, as Mormons from around the world come to BYU. They find somebody that they have to have sex with, so they have to get rushed to get married, breed them young, and get married within a couple of months, if not a couple of weeks. As I was told when I got back from my mission and I was at Rick's College, which I denounce BYU, Idaho, but I was told, oh, you have to wait for a year at least. You have to resist. I barely made it. I don't think I actually did, though. I think it was a couple months short. But that was another issue. But yeah, the church uses BYU for sex trafficking, because you're getting women from outside the state to come to Utah for sex, which in the church is the temple with the law of obedience. It's still there because of the sealing. You give yourself to your husband. You're supposed to obey him. Don't think they're not going to put it back in one day. As well as polygamy now gets thrown in by Nelson. You see what they're doing. It's a step-by-step grooming process. And they're desensitizing Mormons in that sense because they normalize it. Oh yeah, polygamy is not like spiritual wifery. If you saw the Bennett video I did, where Bennett was practicing polygamy in secret. He was a sexual predator, as groomed by the Danites of Brigham Young. But the whole process is to say, well, Joseph Smith is practicing it in secret. It's okay. No, it's not. It's a crime. Joseph Smith did not practice it. You're lying to deceive, to consider it normal. Oh, well, Brigham Young made it official. It's in the Doctrine and Covenants, section 132. Yeah, it's sort of essential now. Not only being a high priest, but you got to have multiple wives in order to be exalted now. Joseph Smith, no. Brigham Young, yes. These are predatorial behaviors that are grooming Mormons to accept polygamy. And the Wikipedia article that I went over in the Bennett video, it specifically distinguishes, as Mormons put it in there, polygamy is a responsible, certified marriage of commitment and devotion to your wives. And how many wives divorced Brigham Young? Especially the one who got him to put in section 132, who had him locked up. It's a crime. They tried to claim that spiritual wifery is a sex orgy. They're both polygamy. So, yeah, the reason why they called it spiritual wifery is so that they can get away with sex with multiple partners and avoid the law. Because right now, if you go to your local bar, or if you don't drink because you're Mormon, you go to your latest young single adult activity to pick up a girlfriend, and say, hey, if we go down to Vegas and get married, we can have sex, and then we'll just annul the marriage before we come back to BYU. And that happened. That was a big old scandal at BYU once in the day. But to justify, because in the world, they work for the weekend so that they can have sex and release their tension that was built up all week. And so it's a different woman every weekend, because they don't want a committed relationship yet. They're not ready for that. They just needed a release. And women don't understand that. It has nothing to do about cow. Is it Milking the Cow? Is that the title of the movie? It's with the Sliders guy who did Kangaroo Jack. Jerry O'Connell, is it? It was something like Milking the Cow, where he's the horrible, evil man who wants sex and can't settle with one woman. And so they use the psychological thing of, well, a bull only has sex with one cow and then moves on to the next cow. Even when they put the pheromones, gross. But you can't compare humans to animals. That's the mistake that scientists make. just false equivalency. And so, yeah, understand that groomers, the church, John DeLynn, is trying to normalize certain behaviors and acceptance of behaviors. Even the sex therapist. Oh, it's normal and natural to be homosexual. John DeLynn. Oh, the church is evil for denying homosexuality. Oops. Yeah, and I've talked about my uncle in that regard, but they're doing it too. And people shouldn't be kept hidden in the closet for fear of getting the hell beat out of them just because their sexual fetish is masturbation with other men. That's not the whole point. But it's getting to the point now where people want to be someone else, and our society is saying, yes, be that other person who you're not. We support you in being somebody else. But they say, oh yeah, be yourself. Be true to yourself. You know, be your truth, whatever. To change what people are. You are born a certain way. You know, tattoos, for example. This is who I am. No, it's not. You're not born with tattoos. It's not who you are. It's who you want to become. Or if you're a victim, you embrace the abuse with some kind of memento. And that's not who you are. If you get a scar from doing your regular labors, you know, like you're working a combine and you stick your hand in without shutting the combine off, you get your hand chopped off, well, yeah, that's now you because of what you did. But it's the concept of normalizing things is the problem here. And our whole culture is trying to desensitize people to normalize criminal behavior, to normalize what is anti-science, to normalize what is anti-truth, to deny truth, deny science. And that's what a predator does in the victimization process. And so that falls also into making their behavior seem natural. And that, no. Undue influence or control pushes personal boundaries. That when you teach abstinence only, that's pushing boundaries in the other direction. Do not think that it's normal for abstinence, that people can just turn it off, from the Book of Mormon musical. Dear God. But this is what you need to watch for, as my video exposing that the church is still practicing what they are appearing to do away with. They're trying to normalize that, oh, well, we don't do it anymore, therefore we're the good guys now. Wait a minute, so you've accused falsely that Joseph Smith is a polygamist, practicing it in secret, to normalize that it's okay to practice polygamy, but you're now saying, well, we don't practice polygamy anymore, so it's okay. It'll be something practiced in the millennium. or after we're dead. Yeah, see what they've done? They've deceived you. Polygamy is only necessary when you're the last man on earth and all there are is other women. Because the human race depends on polygamy now. It's this grooming process that turns what is no longer necessary because of the high population into a need to control and dominate and have power over others. Which was why tribal leaders often had multiple wives, and they justified it by saying, well, I've got to make sure that our bloodline continues, and so if the first wife doesn't give me a child, I need to have another wife to give me a child, and so on and so forth. But when you not quite understand why Nut and Geb had sex, and you think that it's so that you can justify marrying your sisters in a polygamous relationship. If you don't understand, that's the Egyptian practice. So, I think I've covered the majority of it, expounding upon what they're purposely withholding from you. And pointing out specifically how the church is doing it to you as Mormons. Mormons are no longer listening, however. That's the sad part. Is that Mormons, and with the help of YouTube, and I'm concerned, I may not be able to access Google anymore today. So I'm not sure how this video is going to make it to you anyway. Yeah, understand the church was pissed that I exposed them and ordered YouTube to shut me down and make a false claim and pretense for shutting me down so that I would not be allowed to post. And they're still giving me grief because when I'm now allowed to access and manage my account, but when I click on the customize or manage button things, it's a white page. But having experience with this, I knew to copy and paste it back on the search link, and it then shows up. But I use the other channel to post these videos because they're on full alert to silence me. The church is pure evil. They're predators. They're criminal predators. Sexual and criminal predators. They're setting up for something extremely dangerous. And the only way they're going to get away with it is to have America destroyed. We already know they're working with Russia. So it's very frustrating that I can't get any federal officer to take down the church. I'm concerned of compromise, that the church has groomed the government. So, but as a Mormon, this is why you attack me. You've been brainwashed, you've been groomed by the church. You have become their super soldier to protect and defend the church at all costs, which is the secret temple covenants that you give. It's to protect the church. I went over that with you. So, alrighty. This is almost an hour and a half. Wow. Sad thing is only a few of you are going to actually listen. And a few of you, of the few, are even going to make it this far.